Getting to a new island is an incredible sense of adventure. You've got all these new things that you're going to explore, you've got new foods to check out, you've got new friends to meet, but maybe there's something you have to do before you can even get all of that started. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. I'm talking specifically about getting into the lagoon in St. Martin in the Caribbean, but there are some broader implications for cruising also. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by the Boat Galley's VHF radio course. Want to know more about getting the most out of your VHF? All of those advanced features, and even some of the more basic ones? Check out our online course, VHF Radio's Everything You Need to Know. For just $29, learn how to get weather reports, when to use high and low power, how to call bridges and boats you don't know, and so much more. For a quick reminder, get our handy VHF reference in our store and on Amazon. Yes, getting into the bridges in St. Martin and Simpson Bay Lagoon actually does require that you know how to use your VHF. And there are a couple of things specific to that are definitely important for larger VHF use too. One of those is you have to know what channel the bridge is going to be on if you want to actually make contact. But a little bit of a background. St. Martin is a great island in the Caribbean. It's an island with two different countries, actually. There's Sint Maarten, which is Dutch, and then St. Martin, which is French. And the two islands, the two halves of the island, are easy. Once you have cleared in and you've dropped your hook, you don't have to keep clearing out and clearing in to go between them once your boat is set. If you move your boat from one anchorage and then go to an anchorage on the other side, you do have to clear out and back in. And this is true even if you're in the lagoon in St. Martin, because the lagoon, which is an inland bay, is actually in two parts. You've got the Dutch side on the south, and you have the French side on the north. You can get into this lagoon through bridges on either side. The Marigot side bridge, which is the French side, the north side, is a little bit tighter. It's definitely narrower, and actually they don't monitor the VHF. They open twice a day, and you just have to have your boat there. I guess they'll see that you're there. We didn't go through the French side bridge. We went around to the Dutch side, even though we were anchoring on the French side. We had known that you needed to have the big bridge open. There's the big Simpson Bay Bridge, which is a fairly large causeway bridge with lots and lots of boats that go in and out. They open, I think, 4 times a day. And you have to call them on the VHF about 15 minutes ahead of time to let them know that you would like to go through the bridge. Yes, even if they have 15 other boats ready to go through, it is courtesy, expected, and required in many ways for you to call in. I'm not sure that they would close the bridge on you if you didn't call, but you do need to call them. In order to go through the Simpson Bay Bridge and or the Causeway Bridge, which is a bridge that it's a road that goes right across the middle of the lagoon, and it's an opening bridge, and it's a causeway bridge. They open similarly like the Simpson Bay Bridge 4 times a day. You're going to call them and request an opening. And what you do when you request an opening is you request either inbound or outbound, and call them on the radio, Simpson Bay Bridge, this is sailing vessel Calypso, and you wait for them to respond, and you ask for an opening. Generally, they will come right back and say, great, thank you, Captain. It's also polite to call back when you're through and say thank you for the opening. There are some basic little courtesies on there. But a trick with the St. Martin bridges, not particularly, if you are going through from the Dutch side to go anchor on the French side of the lagoon, which means you need to go also through that causeway bridge, is you need to time it so you have both of those bridges open for you. You don't need to clear customs or immigration until you're anchored, even if you're going through to reach the French side. And we got to the island in plenty of time. We knew we were going to not make the 12 o'clock bridge on the Dutch side, but we were waiting for the 3 o'clock opening. And then there would be a 3:30 opening of the Causeway Bridge. And the thing is, that 3:30 bridge opening for the Causeway Bridge is the last one of the day. So if you don't make that 3:30 bridge, you need to wait until 8 o'clock the next morning, until the next one opens. we said, great. We'd read everything we'd read said, fine, you go in and you call ahead and they'll open it for you and then you pay your fees, because there is actually an opening fee for the main Simpson Bay Bridge. There's not supposed to be one for the Causeway Bridge, but there is one for the big bridge. So we called the bridge on Channel 12. We got through no problem, and we got through, and then we called the Causeway Bridge. And the guy said, oh, have you gone and paid your fees at the office? And we said, nope. We were under the impression that you could do that after you'd anchored. Oh, no, you have to do that, and you should have done it before you went through the big bridge. This was a surprise to us and a little bit challenging because our dinghy was on deck, and how would we make that opening? We didn't really want to anchor on the Dutch side and fly the Q flag and not be able to talk to people or not be able to get off the boat. This was an overnight. We had sailed over from the Virgin Islands. We wanted to get in and get off the boat and enjoy ourselves a little bit. We had some friends who were in the lagoon in St. Martin. Well, luckily our friends heard this conversation with the bridge tender, because he was not going to open the Causeway Bridge for us until we had paid our fees, and he had heard from the office that we had paid our fees. Luckily, our buddies heard us on the radio. They came and got me in the dinghy and raced back to the bridge office, which is at a police station, actually, right before you go through the main Simpson Bay Bridge. Long story short, we wound up making that bridge. We quickly took care of our paperwork and made it back to the boat just in time for them to open the bridge, and we made it through and anchored on the French side. Later, in listening to the radio a number of times from people calling, it seemed that it really depended on who the bridge tender was as to whether they were going to make you pay before you anchored or after you anchored going through. But my suggestion is, if you're going to St. Martin, don't wait to find out. We had plenty of time. If we had known that this was really going to be an issue, we could easily have dropped the hook, or we could have figured out getting our dinghy done and gone to the police station and paid our fees before we even went through the main bridge, and there would have been no problem. We were really lucky that a friend of ours came to help us. But rather than wait to find out which bridge tender it is, because probably if you're going through the main bridge in Simpson Bay and you want to go into the French side of the lagoon, you would also like to make that next Causeway Bridge entrance, my suggestion would be to take care of it ahead of time. And this is really the bigger cruising question conversation around this. You need to know the VHF stations. You need to know how to contact the bridge tenders. But you also should be aware of the possibilities of maybe some things changing even before you go in, and taking care of them if you can, rather than waiting to find out. So if we had done a little bit more research, if we had asked the question or called the bridge tender when we were outside, even though we knew we weren't going to go through until the 3 o'clock, if we had called the bridge tender when we were in VHF range and asked him about that, or said, hey, we would like an opening at 3:30, we would have heard from him, yep, you need to go into the Slack office and pay your fees before you go through. We could have taken care of that. We had lots of time. We were tacking back and forth, enjoying our time tacking back and forth, but we had time to do that if we had really thought about it. So, lessons learned. If you're going to go into St. Martin and go through the Simpson Bay Bridge and through the Causeway Bridge, A, check to make sure they're working. B, check to make sure that you've paid your fees before you go through. Then you can answer very easily, yes, we've paid our fees. If you're not in St. Martin and you're going through bridges, it's really smart to know what the bridge opening schedules are, and if there are any snafus or certain things that maybe would be smart to take care of ahead of time. Because even if you're going through the ICW in Florida, I'm sorry for the noise, we are sailing, we're going upwind. Hopefully it's not that loud when I go through here. Figure out what you need to do before you're in a position that you want to do it in a time crunch. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you when we're through bridges and had our VHF conversations. It's been really fun being out here and actually meeting some of our listeners and having them share an Anchorage and come over and have a sundowner. It's been really, really fantastic. And it's one of the things that I love about this whole cruising community is, yes, we get to share the fact that we're out here in this beautiful place enjoying this incredible lifestyle. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. We love it when you know that we are helping you make boat life better, because that's what everything is all about at the Boat Galley. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share us with your friends. And don't forget, there's another one of these on Monday and another one of these next Thursday. Have the most spectacular week.